In this episode of Jerks Talk Games, we take a look at how much we love conquering the world as we play the Civilization series. Welcome to Jerks Talk Games, a podcast where two programmers and sometimes other people join us to talk about their love of video games. My name is Chris Tankersley, and with me is my every-time co-host so far, Gary Hockin. Hello, Gary.
Hey, Chris. How you doing?
We'll replace you soon. And then today, we are joined with another guest, a friend of ours, Chuck Reeves. Say hi, Chuck.
Hi, Chuck.
So we already did that joke, so we're going to cut it out in post. Not really. Because I suck at post. Other than Gary finally liked the jokes I put into the video version, which was nice.
It's the first time I've watched the video version all the way through. I normally just sort of scan through it 2 times pace to check it's all okay. So yeah,
I put a lot of love and effort into the
you do, and so I will watch. I mean, we got
to find a way to get the view count up. That's all I'm saying.
You know that it's not much fun to watch yourself being a fool in a drunken live podcast in Washington D.C., right? So yeah, they're kind of difficult to watch sometimes. It's all good though.
You're not as vain as I am. Okay, so at the beginning of every episode, we like to talk about a couple of the games that we've been playing. Since we have a guest here, Chuck, what have you been playing lately?
I float around between a lot of games, and right now I'm doing Civ Sticks, Stellaris, EU4, Stardew Valley, and Factorio. And I like to play a lot of games that I can play on the train because I have a long train ride. So anything that's good on a trackpad or doesn't need a lot of mouse control for it are the big games that I'm going to cycle through because I get bored on the train.
They're just words to me. I picked out Civ and Factorio, and the rest of them were just random words. So are there any of those particular random word games you think are good enough to explain to me exactly what they are?
Well, Stellaris and EU4. Well, EU4 is Europa Universalis IV. It's a game by Paradox. And Stellaris is also using the same Paradox engine where it's this multifaceted political strategy game. So it is a standard 4X game, but there's a lot of politics involved in it. And EU4 tends to be a very complex game. It's got a high learning curve. If you play Crusader Kings, it's a similar engine to it, but where EU4 and Crusader Kings are different, Crusader Kings, you're pretty much focused on people, whereas EU4, you're focused on countries and the politics surrounding that. And cool. Stellaris just takes EU4 into space, basically.
Oh, okay. So, okay. Yeah. Cool.
Have you ever played Harvest Moon, Gary?
No.
Okay, then you probably won't like Stardew Valley.
Yeah,
you run a farm, so
that's it.
I've played Farmville.
It is better than Farmville.
Well,
because you don't have to continually pay it to win it.
Stardew Valley has a nice RPG aspect to it.
Yeah.
Chris, putting together PHP Annotated Monthly, which is the worst job I have to do every month, is better than Farmville. So, come on.
Oh yeah,
now.
Stardew Valley would be much. Stardew Valley is one of those very casual games that you can lose a lot of time to.
Yes.
Cool. So.
Okay. So Chris,
Gary,
what about you? You go
Gary, you can go because I'm hosting, so
okay.
I will gladly go last.
I mean, genuinely, since we got back from Washington, D.C., I literally got told by my good co-host that Fallout 4 plus the whole season ticket for DLC was available really cheap on Steam. And I played Fallout 4 first time around on PS4, so I went and bought Fallout 4 for the second time. And I've played that nearly exclusively since the last time we spoke. I don't think I've played anything else. I just finished the Mechanist DLC again, which is actually really underrated, I think. I genuinely think that...
I liked it. It is short, but it is also one of the cheaper ones. But you get what, a 8-hour storyline plus the robot stuff out of it. So,
but if like I'm doing it early in the game from level 20 odd, rather than like when I've already done all the rest of the content, and it's kind of pointless doing it when you're level 65 or something and you've done everything else. So it actually fits a lot better when you play it early on in the game because the armor you get from it is pretty reasonable to take you through the mid levels. So yeah, I'm really. I mean, to be honest, it's like a different game on PC than it is on PS4. So I'm really enjoying it again. The graphics are so much better, and playing it with a mouse and keyboard, I'm not using VATS hardly at all now, whereas I nearly, spec for VATS in the original. But hey, this isn't the Fallout 4 episode. That was last week. So, Chris, what have you been playing?
Fallout New Vegas. Because
whoa, it's Fallout episode 2. Yay.
It is. No, so if you don't watch the video portion of the podcast, we go through and we record quite a bit of gameplay to throw over top of us because you don't want to stare at us for hours on end. And especially with the live ones, those tend to not have video anyway. So I had to install New Vegas to get some video gameplay. And even though I was just like you and I repurchased Fallout 4 for PC because it was like $50 for the base plus season pass for the autumn sale. I've been playing New Vegas because that's one of my favorite games of all time. Coming back from DC, I picked up RimWorld, which is I think both of you have played that.
I've
correct?
played it, yes.
I have not played it.
You have not played it.
It sounds rude, but I am not adverse to actually giving it a go. What is RimWorld, Chris?
So RimWorld is one of those trying to think of the best way to describe it. It is one of those games where you issue orders and you let your little people do them. So it's not like The Sims where you have direct control over.
Yeah, I know.
But it's one of those games. So the idea is you've got 3 or 4 people that have crashed onto a planet, and you've got to build a base and fend off raiders and that kind of stuff, and the general kind of stuff.
What winds up happening is you build a base for hours and then lose the game.
Yes. I will say, though, I think I enjoy Dwarf Fortress much more. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it, but if you like that kind of game, Dwarf Fortress is that times 1,000. And there's a lot more fun, I think, in Dwarf Fortress. But RimWorld is a very easy one of those kind of to get into that genre of game and start playing.
I'm looking at the Steam page. Sorry, Chuck. I'm looking at the Steam page. It looks like Prison Architect or something, but hey.
It's the same vein.
Yeah.
So instead of you building a prison that all of the inmates live in, you're building a base for people to actually live in. But it's the same idea. Like you just say, build a room here and put the stuff in it, and you have to wait for the little meeples to pick the things up and move them and do that.
Cool. I was going to say I'll give it a try, but there's no way I'm going to have time between now and next time we record to play any other games. So yeah, I won't give it a try, but I'll pretend that I'm going to.
The first game in that genre that I remember playing like that was Evil Genius.
Yes, it's a lot like that game.
It's a lot like that game. So like you're just building a base to take over the world, and it's a very similar type of game.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so in much like our Fallout 4 episode, we decided this time around instead of picking 2 different games that we've talked about, we are going to actually discuss another franchise, which I think is, if not as close to my heart, just as close as Fallout itself is. And that is the Civilization franchise. I have played pretty much every single version and variant that there is. And it's spanned quite a long time. The original Civilization came out in 91. Published by Microprose, and it was designed by Sid Meier and Bruce Shelley, which I think, and this has been a common vein through most of it, Sid Meier is very much a consultant on how the game should be made, which is why his name is still on there, and it kind of preserves his legacy. But he kind of directs how the game should go. In fact, the year that it came out, it ended up winning the best military or strategy game from Origins, which is, I mean, back then there weren't a whole lot of these really kind of deep strategy games. And I mean, you compare it to the new ones, it's not super as deep, but there's a lot of stuff that came in Civilization that is still there. Most of the games that came after that just kind of built upon a lot of the stuff that Civilization 1 started with in 91.
It definitely did start that genre. Because back then there weren't a lot of games for it, and Civilization is actually one of the first games I remember playing. And I just loved the world and the story because I was building a whole story around the civilization I was building that was my own. So
yeah, The one thing, like, I genuinely believe is if you took somebody who had never played the games before and gave them Civilization 1, and then they could play that for 10 minutes or half an hour, and then you gave them Civilization 6, they would know that it was the same game, if that makes any sense, because the mechanics are so damn similar in 6 as they are in 1. Like, even to the point you can play the same style. I know that they've definitely come on quite a lot in that time, but it is so much the same game. It's amazing, to be honest. Anyway, sorry, that's a big aside.
No. I think that is probably the beauty of it. We've said this many times. A good, simple game is one that will outlive and be much more playable over time than these ones that are just like super flashy, like Call of Duty and stuff like that. I don't think will persevere as much as things like Civilization. Because Civilization 1, you're already starting off with everything that Civilization has. You have real historic societies that you pick, headed by real people that ran these civilizations. You have the tech tree even starting out in Civilization 1. So you have the whole idea of, I need to research and build up my civilization over time. Like, you don't get the wheel out of the gate. You have to actually research the wheel and everything that precedes it, and for you to be able to get like chariots, and then you have to do horses to be able to get like chariots and things like that.
The tech tree is like one of the things that hasn't changed much, right? I know that the tech tree has changed tons in that there are brand new techs, but you still, even from Civilization 1, you needed to research mathematics to get catapults, and you still need to do the tech tree is so similar, which is why I think I have such affection for playing the whole series, is that whole tech tree is the same.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really change much. Well, I mean, in 6, it sort of changed a bit because you had the tech tree and the civics tree.
Yeah.
Which is the new thing they introduced right there, which kind of makes sense for the way they broke that out. But I guess we'll talk about that when we get to 6.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more when we get to 6. But I mean, even in this 1991, DOS era game, you have this very long expanding tech tree that you have to follow, and all the other civilizations are following as well. And it's divided into different eras. So you have, like the very early Bronze era and the Classical era and the Modern era, all decided by what techs you've researched. And you can have different civilizations in different eras. And the last time I was playing Civ 5, we got all the way to the Modern era, and I think it was the Aztecs were still in the Classical era because they had been walled in and just could not build up enough research.
You kicked their asses then.
I did. In the end, I finally did that. Your empire expands based on your city. Now, the later ones added, like influence around the cities, but you only got bigger as quickly as you could generate higher populations and, venture out and build new cities. So you have that underpinning of, we're going to slowly sprawl out. And you have to be careful because even in the old games and the new games, you can't just say, like, I'm going to have one here and then on the other side of the map have another city, because then how do you, funnel stuff back and forth? You can deal diplomatically with all the other civilizations. So you have that whole mechanic of keeping the other civilizations happy, or just pissing them off to the point where you blow them up, as Gary so eloquently put in our notes.
We've talked before, Chris, about my lack of patience with these games. Like, why would I bother to try and be patient and deal with civilizations diplomatically when I have the crossbow and they don't? Just blow them out of the water.
No, it is fair, and I can't remember the number. I could probably count the number of times I've had diplomatic victories on a single hand.
I can count the number of times. I can tell you right now the number of times from number 1 to number 6 that I have had a diplomatic victory.
Well, that's the way to play these games. At least in Civilization 1, it was all about the domination victory, and that's just taking over every other city on the map and just controlling the whole world. To me, that's why I played it.
You only had 2 end games: either wipe everybody off the board, or research every single future tech and get to the point where you left.
Yeah, the Alpha Centauri was there in Civilization 1, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes,
and that's what you had for 1 and for 2, actually, were those 2 victories.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you couldn't do, and like I said, the later games added those things, but right now, even out of the gate, you have those two end conditions. So you didn't have to necessarily defeat everybody, because especially if you were playing with a large map, it was really, really hard to wipe everybody off the map. That took quite a while.
Civilization 1 was quite easy in retrospect.
It is.
If you think it's not, combat is quite easy. There's a big jump between the different tiers of each unit. So if you've got a crossbowman and the other person's got the tier below, which would be the archer, you will always beat them to the point where you're probably 2 or 3 times more tougher than they are. So I found, like, looking back, don't get me wrong, at the time I never thought, oh, this game is way too easy, because it was so much fun. But looking back now at the later games, the earlier games were really easy.
Yeah, I mean, you could game them much easier, but also they were designed. The original version came out for DOS. There was one for Amiga. Yeah. There was one for, and just to piss Gary off, for Super Nintendo.
No.
You have it.
I played this.
I do have it.
Actually, I played on Amiga.
Yeah, and most of those stayed pretty faithful. The Super Nintendo version kind of stinks, and I only bought it just because I like Civilization. And so you had these limitations of hardware, but even the DOS version, those computers weren't fast. I mean, 91, you're talking 20 megahertz ish. Probably
my family had a 486 with maybe 8K of RAM. Of RAM, and it was able to play it, but I had to get out of Windows 3.1. I had to boot it into DOS to play it.
Had to get the boot disk out and
showing off with 486 there. Wow.
It was 486.
Yeah.
My father got it because he broke his leg on the job, and they gave him like $5,000 for everything, and we bought a 486
that bought him half a computer. But yeah, so the other thing you could do was build wonders, which has persisted still to this day. The ability for a civilization to say, like, I want to build the Great Wall of China, despite the fact that I'm Rome, and still call it the Great Wall of China for some reason. And their influence has changed over time. Like Civ 5, it actually stopped. You could see it build, actually build across your territory, and it helped slow people down coming into your area, but you still had that, these big giant projects that a civilization could build, and the idea kind of sounds like we have to be able to pool a bunch of resources into this and get it to work, but I ended up with, like, my capital city just building everything because it could churn out production like crazy.
If in doubt, build a wonder, right?
Yes. Do I really need to build a courthouse? I'll build the pyramids. It's great.
Courthouse in the capital was always useless. There's no reason for it. There's no corruption there. Your palace is there. You're watching your subjects
exactly
as the military dictator that you are. Even
there is no reason that Rome shouldn't have half of the world's wonders. It is the greatest civilization of all time. I mean, really and truly. And I think the Civ 1 had one of, I think, the greatest bugs of all
features.
Time.
It's a feature.
Feature. So. It still kind of lasts to this day. I don't know how bad he is in Civ 6, but Gandhi is just a nuclear loving asshole once you get to that point in the game. And I think the reason for it is actually fairly funny. Do either of you know why Gandhi gets so angry?
It was an underflow.
Yes, so
every leader had an opinion of you, and it was used to dictate how aggressive they were going to be. And Gandhi, by default, started off with a 1. But if your civilization adopted democracy as a government form, then one of the benefits of democracy was every civilization will get a 2 aggression reduction. So 1 minus 2 would actually make it 255, because the buffer went up there. It would be -2, but it would be treated as 255 aggression. So it's like the highest aggression that can be. So Gandhi would just be like, I'm super pissed off at you for adopting democracy. And that has kept through the franchise. I haven't gotten him in 6 yet, or I haven't gotten him I did get him in one playthrough, but I wiped him out right away because I'm like, no, I'm not dealing with this right now. And I don't know how aggressive he is with nukes, but they still keep that quirk into every other civilization since 1 because of that.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that it's Gandhi, and
it's always Gandhi. And every time I play Gandhi, I always play him aggressive. Like I'm just go for aggressive.
The game is fine up till you adopt democracy, and then he gets angry, and then when he unlocks nukes, that's just when it's all over. So, as important life tip, always take out Gandhi as soon as possible.
Yep. Always take out everyone as soon as possible.
Yeah, if you're playing like Gary,
Yes.
if you're playing like Gary, nuke everyone because they will come looking for you.
In 5, I remember because in 5 they started introducing civilization traits and unique units, and Gandhi actually got a penalty for having too many cities. He got an unhappiness penalty, but the more population that his cities had, it would negate itself out. So in 5, it wasn't as bad because he wasn't going to expand out ridiculously to every corner of the planet. So you can keep him down to like 4 or 5 cities. He's fine in 5.
I just like my own gameplay hint across the board is always declare war with everyone as soon as humanly possible. Because the worst case scenario is that, you die and lose the game. Brilliant. The best case scenario is they end up giving you ridiculous trades to try and make you make peace with them.
Like, I mean, they're going to denounce you at some point anyway. Like,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah, but early on in the game, you can get away with that. You can actually declare war with somebody, trade with them, get one of their better cities, and then still have diplomatic relations till the time you stab them in the back when you got nuclear weapons. So
that may or may not have been the reason the Aztecs stuck around so long in my last playthrough.
So we've pretty much done 1, right?
Yeah, I mean, 1 was actually probably the most successful. Well, I think Civ 2 was probably the most successful, but under Microprose at the time, it was the most successful game that they had, which did and didn't translate into success for Microprose. So Civ 1 came out 91. By 93, they were completely bankrupt and had to be sold off because of things like Civilization on the Super Nintendo. They decided to get into home console ports, and there's not as much money to be made in that, especially with licensing fees and stuff. So they ended up selling themselves off. We didn't get another Civilization game until 96 with Civ 2, which is probably the one that most people, if they played old computer games, that's probably the one most people started on.
It's amazing to think that Microprose went bankrupt when you look at some of the games they had in the 90s, stuff like F-19 Stealth Fighter, which sold massive numbers.
Well, so when they switched to doing the home console stuff, that wiped out all the money that they had. They poured all their development.
Like Pirates sold in huge numbers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going on the side, but I was just thinking to myself how the Microprose games there were some real classics there.
Yeah, no, they did a ton, and it was. Yeah, and it's now when Spectrum Holobyte bought them in 93, they kept them as a separate company. Because I think they understood the reason why Microprose had done so well. But it is amazing that, I mean, Civ 1 kind of brought them into like this golden era of like, they're flush with cash, they can do whatever they want, and they flushed it down the toilet within 2 years.
Well, good for them.
But I mean, it also ended up taking 5 more years before we got a Civilization 2 game.
But I remember that 486 computer, it actually had a CD-ROM on it. And the CD I had, it had Civilization on it. It also had F-16, Pirates, and Railroad Tycoon. Like all on that one disc right there.
Right?
Yeah, Sid Meier has made a lot of excellent games. I never got too much into the Railroad Tycoon series, but it is definitely one of the better business management games that are out there.
Okay.
Yeah, if we're going to go down the side, Railroad Tycoon the original was really good. I haven't liked any of the later games, but the original, it is designed better to be better played as a square top-down, very basic tile game. Like, it's perfect as a tile game. So when they tried to make it like isometric or something, it's like, actually, it's lost the charm of the tiles. So anyway,
you may like 3. I liked Railroad Tycoon 3 a little better than 2 from the economy side, because it was still 3D and everything, but the economics was way more complex in 3 than it was in 2, but it held on to the first one's roots.
Cool.
In my opinion.
So to angle the train back to Civilization. Speaking of the Railroad Tycoon 1 in the top down, switching to Civ 2, we switched to an isometric view, which we basically stayed at since then. The top down view worked really well for 91, but by the time we've got Civilization 2 coming out, around this time you've got SimCity 2000 coming out that's also isometric. We get a slight view change, but the game itself hasn't really changed. It looks nicer, but it has everything that Civ 1 had, just kind of cleaned up things. You had the first time we see expansions show up, so it ended up having 3 expansions that had Conflicts and Civilization and Fantastic Worlds, which were just extra scenarios that were added on top. And then you had Test of Time, which had tile sets, including, I think, a Mars one, if I remember right.
Yes, it did have a Mars one.
Yeah, so you could kind of get a little taste of what Alpha Centauri would be later down the road. But I think is probably the most popular version of Civilization, at least I think based off of sales. And has been ported to, just like the regular Civilization has been ported to many different systems. I don't have anything to show you, Gary, so you don't have to get too worried.
No, it's fine.
Free Civ for Linux was basically the same graphic set as Civilization 2.
Yeah, so you end up having it. The Civ 1 I don't think was ever copied in any way, but then you had Free Civ for Linux, which was probably one of the most popular Linux games of, especially back then when we didn't really have many games for Linux. But I think it starts off the whole thing of, okay, Civ 1 was a great game. We're going to just build on top of that. We're not going to throw everything out and start all over and start a whole brand new genre or turn the series on its head. It's just Civ 1 did great. Let's just make it incrementally better.
Civ 2 was like Skyrim Enhanced Edition, right? It's exactly the same game, but just with a new game engine. That's the way I genuinely like, with a new graphics engine.
Yeah.
Sorry,
like because you didn't really get any, you didn't get any gameplay tweaks to it. I mean, like a couple little bug fixes here and there, but basically we made it isometric and it looks prettier.
And I think you had the city borders show up there a little bit cleaner, and you also had the advisors. The advisor video would come up and tell you how your civilization is doing.
Sorry, I did. I forgot we.
The entertainment advisor was always my favorite because it was an Elvis impersonator. They'd be like, "Hey man, your civilization's doing good," or people aren't happy, man.
The advisors. I never use the advisors for anything, even in the new games. But we went a really long time. But Civ 2 sold a lot of copies of the games. Enough that since then we have had a steady stream of Civilization games, which I am very happy of. My wallet's not quite so happy about. You're just getting these kind of incremental things. I think except for and I think, Chuck, you added this, Civilization Call to Power, which was a Civ game, but not really a Civ game.
I mean, it was licensed by Sid Meier did license it to Activision to do it. And I actually did not like it because there was a lot of things that changed in that game. So it is part of the franchise, but it was a very different gameplay. For one, you didn't have settlers that would build your roads and your cities. All settlers did was just settle a new city. That was it. In order to build a road, you had to put some of your resources into what they call public works projects, and you get these points every turn, and that's how you would build out your roads. But you can only build them out one at a time. And it wasn't balanced right. So to build a road between like your capital city and your next city would take forever to do. And I'm just like, this is kind of crazy. But the thing I did like about it was you were able to go past the year 2000 and actually colonize water tiles and eventually colonize space tiles as well, like above your cities. So there was these different layers to it, to the world that you can do.
Sounds hideous.
It was interesting, but it fell short for a Civilization game.
Cool. Yeah, I remember, I think, playing it on PlayStation. Because I think it came out for Windows and PlayStation originally.
Yeah, it came out for Windows and the PS1.
Yeah. And then I think they did Call to Power 2, but it wasn't Civilization Call to Power 2 because they lost the license.
They lost the license, yeah. So it was just Call to Power is what they called it.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, let's build another one of these horrible, shitty games.
Yep. I can go on a rant about Activision games, but I won't.
No, we'll save that for an Activision hate episode because they did a lot of bad things. So I
did want to mention though, Civilization 2, you were able to mod it, and I'm doing the air quotes right now. But I remember going into the files and finding a CSV file that had all the units and their powers, like how strong they were, how big they were. And I remember seeing the sprite for it, and there were three units that I never saw come up. One was like, they were sort of like steampunky looking things. There was like a dirigible, like a steam powered tank, and some kind of mod of the ironclad that looked like very fantastical. And you can also go in and change around the research plans as well too. So you can add your own research trees, which unlock things. So it was modded in the sense that you can just modify the CSV file and change the way the game is played.
Yeah, I think other than the tile sets, I don't think there was any official mods.
There were no official mods, but you were able to go in and dig through and change things around yourself.
Cool.
Go ahead.
No, it's fine. I was going to move us on. You're going to move us on.
I was going to move us on as well. Yes. So then in 2001, we had Civilization 3, which moved us into the 3D era a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing that it did add was cultural victories. So now Gary had more ways to not win the game. Which, I mean, like I said, I have rarely ever won in a cultural victory. But you could do that now if you
I don't
really
remember
want.
Civ 3.
That's
quite a damning indictment of a game, right?
It is. Was this the one that colonization was built off of?
Colonization was built off of this one, yes.
Yeah.
This is the one where roads stopped being straight and became squiggly. That's how I remember this one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which I don't remember exactly why, because it didn't switch to hexes until Civ 5. No. So there's no good reason for the stuff to be all squiggly. But again, we're seeing just kind of a refinement of Civilization 1. So now, Civ 2 moved us into isometric view. Now we're going to start to put prettier graphics on top of this. And I mean, like I said, some gameplay tweaks and things like that. Did have 2 expansions, Play the World and Conquest, which, like the Civ 2 stuff, were just scenarios to play. But it did have, you know what, I'm going to look this up because I didn't write it down. Because I want to say Civ Colonization was actually Civ 4.
Well, they had an original colonization, and then when
the original colonization was built off the Civ 1 engine.
That's right, yeah. Colonization was built off of Civ 4. My mistake. I could look this up on Steam right now.
Yeah, nobody cares. Let me just make that point. Yeah, nobody. Sorry, the only people who care are the 2 people in this hangout who isn't me.
It was a fun game. You're the Dutch, and you could trade. Not selling it for you. I'm not selling it for you, am I?
No. I played it. I did play it, actually. I just not for me.
Yeah. But I kind of agree. Civ 3, I don't remember actually playing Civ 3. I own it.
I remember playing it. I had there was a collector's case which had Play the World and Conquests in it. I got it for maybe Christmas or day. It was
Civ 3 Gold, I think it was.
Gold Edition, yeah. And I remember playing it through getting domination once and then never playing it again. But I remember liking the strategic resources and territories aspect of it. So like culture wasn't just, making people happy. It would also expand out your borders. And the more culture a city had, it would also add defensive bonuses to the city because it's pressing out your borders further.
Yeah.
But I remember the one thing I found annoying about it was you needed saltpeter to build cavalry or musketmen. And
which doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. They put that back in 6, by the way. But
This is Watch.bot 6.
Let's save the moaning about 6. Like, I'm really looking forward to that part of this podcast.
We're slowly getting there.
We're getting there.
Yeah. I think on Steam I have 0 hours of Civ 3. Yeah,
I didn't realize it was on Steam.
it is. Just don't buy it. Just skip that one. Civ 4 came out fairly quickly from there, which I think kind of revitalized the Civilization franchise itself.
Yes, agreed.
Came out in 2005. We now have religion and proper civics. So more things to research, more things to take into account as you're building out your civilization. And the 2 expansions for that, Warlords and Beyond the Sword, basically kind of screw people over from buying the expansions. Beyond the Sword, both of them just basically kind of add things on top of it. But Beyond the Sword contained everything that was in Warlords. So if you bought Warlords, you shouldn't have. And then added a couple gameplay tweaks on top of that. But again, other than the religion and civics, we're mostly seeing refinement of the base civilization setup.
But it was a big difference to the graphics engine, wasn't it? It was like chalk and cheese from 3 to 4.
Oh yeah.
Because
3 only had 3D units and 4 was fully 3D, correct?
Yeah,
yes.
And also, it's like 3 has got a really like 16-bit feel to it, whereas 4 really looks and feels like a more like a modern style game.
Mm-hmm.
3 looks really dated when you look back at the screenshots now, whereas 4 doesn't look so dated. It looks like any other kind of modern era game. So,
yeah, I think 4 holds up much better than the Civ 3 does. And I think this is the first time where you see celebrities taking part in a game. You had Leonard Nimoy as the narrator for the wonders that you build, the events that happen in the game. You actually have Leonard Nimoy narrating your civilization as you grow, which is pretty neat.
Only for the base, the vanilla. In Beyond the Sword, they added some research, and it was actually narrated by Sid Meier because they couldn't get Leonard Nimoy to come in and record the new, the new quotes as it was.
Because he was terribly disappointed in Civ 3.
Maybe.
He went back and said, "What have I got myself into?"
Yep.
Yeah, and I think. Go ahead, Gary.
I'm just going to say the roads are still squiggly, just in case anyone was wondering.
The roads will forever be squiggly. The roads to Rome will never be straight, unfortunately.
Correct.
They did start curving the terrain a bit, so like they would follow a river a little bit.
Yeah, but it would still be nice to have a road that just goes straight, which would be great.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes.
And I'm going to guess that was a big selling point for Civ 5 for Gary, because you can kind of have straight roads now.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Civ 5, the roads are not perfect. Like in Civ 1 and 2, they were, when I say straight, I mean pixel perfect straight, right? They were literally like interconnected straight lines, triangles, if my memory serves me correct. You just had triangles all over the map because you would literally build roads on every tile because there was no point not building the road improvement early on. It's like, in fact, I don't think they even had any gold upkeep in Civ 1 and 2. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think so. I think it was just.
I think they were just free improvement. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you had to pay to do it. They cost work and stuff, but then there was no turn upkeep as it went on. So Civ 5 gave us back mostly straight roads. Though, God forbid you put two roads next to each other, because then you get this weird, like, on-ramp, off-ramp clover thing that shows up.
Yes.
Which pisses me off to no end, because you play something like City Skylines, and you're trying to be very careful about, like, okay, I want these roads to intersect, and, you know, like, if they come this way, it's slightly shorter, but then you just have this road gore that shows up when the workers decide that, oh, okay, well, we need to have this just turn into a pretzel because these two roads intersect for whatever god-awful reason.
But you didn't need as many roads in Civ 5. In Civ 4, you needed a lot more roads, because in order for you to get access to the luxuries or strategic resources, you had to build a road to it, or it had to be connected by a river or ocean tile.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your cities wouldn't import it. In Civilization 5, they took that out, where the resources just had to be within your borders for you to get.
Yeah, and I mostly built roads just because it sped up army movement.
Yeah.
So getting the army from point A to point B, you need roads and you need chariots, and that's pretty much it.
It's always been a game about infrastructure. Every time I'm doing domination, I make sure that as soon as I conquer a country, I build up the railroads, the road system, so I can just move my units to the border of the next victim.
Yeah, the Civ 5 released in 2010, so my comprehensive research notes tell me.
You're welcome.
And one of the few times we're going to see a massive change was that the tiles changed from squares to hexes, or from rectangles.
Yeah,
from squares to hexes.
It went from squares to hexes because the switching to isometric just turned it into a diamond. But yeah, so you have to worry about more units being able to attack cities or other units. So it added another level of strategy that you had to think about when you did have these big battles that were going on. So you could pack more things up close to, like, say, a city. So I would just have, a row of mortars. But then that also opened those things up to multiple things. So it was much easier to get from destroy one unit and then be able to redirect them to another one without having to move, which was, good and bad. And even coming from other games, I think Civ is a much better hex game than it is a square game.
Agreed.
I definitely agree.
I think makes more sense. The one thing that I didn't like about Civ 5, and Civ 6 kind of sounds like it's going to go down this road as well, is that it was not a complete game when it was shipped. It was lacking in a lot of areas.
They didn't have religion at first.
They didn't have religion. Basically, there was no early or late game. It showed itself in, like the classical era and things like that. But anything after that, their early game was just a race to see who could get highest up in the tech tree as quickly as possible. And then the end game was just how much army could I build? And it really wasn't, I don't think, that fun. The two expansions for it, Gods and Kings and Brave New World, I think ended up creating a complete game. Mm-hmm. And it is only at that point we actually had a fully fledged civilization game. I think something that's, worthy of being called a civilization game at that point.
Yes, it's interesting because Civ 5 is my favorite so far. Now, I came to Civ 5 late. I didn't buy it early adopter. In fact, I probably bought it 2013 or something. I bought it when I was looking for a game to play on my MacBook. So whenever it dropped on Mac, and I was looking for a game I could play on a trackpad when I was away, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know Civilization 5 existed. So I bought, I was like, oh, that would be absolutely perfect. And I absolutely loved it because why wouldn't you? And I still do. For me, it's more fun than Civ 6 at this moment in time. I have to put it out there,
I did a lookup on Steam because Civilization 5 is the first Civ game that I played solely through Steam. Because Civ 4 actually had the CDs for it. And I looked at the time played, and I have close to 1,600 hours of Civ 5.
Wow. Yeah.
In total, from 2010 to now. And that's because, again, it's a trackpad game. You can play it very easily on the trackpad. And I have an hour train commute. So I would just go on, turn the Wi-Fi off, play Civ 5 for an hour, and be done with it. And 15 hours a week, that adds up. The only problem is that I wasn't unlocking achievements because I wasn't connected to the Wi-Fi. So the first time I got the Icon Has Nukes achievement was maybe 2014, and I'm like, I've set off tons of nukes before. Why am I just getting this achievement now?
I kind of share Gary's thoughts on this. As of right now, I think Civ 5 is probably my favorite game. I've seen a little bit of Civ 6, and I like some of the stuff that they've done to it, and we'll talk. I'll let you guys talk about it more here in a minute. But Civ 5 with the expansion packs, I think, is probably the quintessential Civilization game. It has everything you could kind of want in this type of game. You can do the trading because the trading system is, I think, fairly well balanced and thought out. There's an early, there's a middle, there's a late game. So you can kind of focus on the religion aspects early, which I never do, but the possibility is there. Some of the improvements added in Brave New World, really help that end game quite a bit in making it stay engaging and fun. And you can pour lots of hours to it. I mean, in Steam, I've only got about 30 hours into it. But I've played it on other accounts and stuff before I reset my Steam account. And it's really, I think, probably right now the best game, despite 6 being out.
Agreed.
And so that kind of does lead us to Civ 6. And I have not played it, mostly because Civ 5, I think, did kind of burn me a little bit because I did get it when it came out, then paid $30 for Gods and Kings, then paid $30 for Brave New World. And that adds up. And, knowing how quickly games go on sale on Steam, Fallout 4 is a great example of it. Came out last year and it was $50 with the season pass on Steam this last time around. And I paid $90-ish on Xbox One. So I think I'm going to wait, but I will let you two wax on philosophically about Civ 6.
So the difference is, I guess, they've made a massive difference to the way that you build cities. Cities can now take up more than one hex. So I'd still be interested to hear what you think of these improvements, Chris, even though you haven't actually, the thoughts of them. So your cities now no longer take up a single hex, which I would say is probably the biggest difference for me. So you now have districts.
Yeah, you have the whole district thing. Yeah. So now buildings take up tiles instead of them living on the single city tile.
And what I like about it is, for instance, the encampment, which is where you build your armories, stables, barracks. It will actually act as sort of a second defensive position for your city. Mm-hmm. So it can actually attack units coming in, and then your city can also attack as well. So you can cut off, if you place it strategically, you can cut off barbarian forces from invading and even enemy forces from ransacking your city and just swarming your city, pillaging everything. You have this extra barrier for it.
But that's a good point, and a good point of that is also your military units spawn in your what you just called there, Chuck? The embankment.
The encampment.
Sorry, yeah. Mm-hmm. But this is really nice because if you're moving upwards, you can build your encampment north, and you can have your units spawn in 10 tiles higher than they would before. But the biggest problem for me is that when you build cities, if you're like me, you pick kind of strategically where you're going to build your city. Like, I don't take even my first settler and just plonk them down. I might even take 10 turns to find like a perfect capital city location. But if you want to build encampments and other and the other stuff early on, you end up having to destroy the resources on hexes because you run out of room quite quickly. I genuinely find.
To me, I actually enjoy that challenge because another thing about districts is certain districts next to each other will buff the other district. So if you build the commerce district close to the harbor district, both districts receive a plus to gold per turn worked by your city workers. And not only that, if they're within 2 tiles of the city center, they would also get another buff. So now you have 3 for every citizen that works on that tile.
Yep.
And I think part of that was to at least from what I'm seeing as an outsider not playing it, it seems like that's very much to force you to specialize in your cities. where, I mean, like I said, like even Civ 5, like I dump pretty much all of my wonders in my capital because most of the time that's the quickest place I can build them, and a lot of them are, buffs that go out from there. I build the same thing in every single city because there's no reason not to. But I think Civ 6 really makes you think more about the architecture of your civilization than just I need to have 10 cities just because I want to gobble up that many resources.
I definitely agree with that. If you're going to build a city by the mountains, then you want to build that city is going to be your research city and your holy city. Because if you build the holy site near a mountain, every mountain that's adjacent to it gives it +1 faith. And the same with the campus, it'll give you +1 science. So you can really specialize your cities out and plan out defensively where you're putting things.
It's for me, the reason, like, I've played through probably 5-6 times. I've started, I mean, when I say play through, I've started a new game. I don't mean I've played through to completion. And you end up, it's great if you tweak the map and the generation. It's great if you've got wide open spaces. But I like to play in these like more challenging ways. So I'll make sure that the terrain is like small islands with mountains. So there's like not a ton of space, and it ends up becoming impossible to actually continue. Like if you're not really careful, it ends up becoming to a point where you actually can't carry on. Actually, this city can't grow any bigger. It's impossible because I have no. Whereas in previous civilizations, you could always get like fish from the sea, even if they wouldn't grow as fast. You could always get food from ocean tiles. Well, you can't build on ocean tiles. So if you're on a fairly small island, you are completely limited in what you can do. Now, of course, you can move around and make more cities, but it's not the fun that I've had previously because it's changed the mentality of the game quite drastically. Intentionally, obviously, but...
Mm-hmm. You can build on water tiles, but you can only build on ones that have resources. So
but I can't build an encampment on a water tile, for example.
You can build a district on a water tile.
I can't build a district on my water tile. Yeah, I can suck resources out of water tiles, but I can't. If I'm on a small island, I have incredibly limited number of districts I can build, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that you want to me, I don't want every city to be specialized in everything. I want like my city, my production city, and my science city, my faith city. And you kind of had that in Civilization 5 because you had the nation wonders, where, for instance, one city can build an ironworks, and that city would get a 50% boost to production. So I'm like, all right, this is the city that's going to have all the mines surrounding it, and I'm going to use traders to give it food. And this is just going to churn out all my units for me.
I totally understand what you're saying, but the wonders are still incredibly important in Civ 6. And some of the wonders are incredibly overpowered or powerful. Let's not say overpowered. So, for example, the Great University, or whatever it's called, is amazing, but you need to have a university in every city in order to build it. Now, if I don't have the space to physically do that, I can't ever build this amazing wonder. And that's killing it for me. And do you know what the other thing that's killing me is? I find it incredibly difficult, and I do play on up there at the hardest game modes. I always have on Civilization, because the strategic resources. Sorry, not the strategic resources, the actual resources. So your iron and your all the other resources are incredibly difficult to get. But they don't seem to apply to the barbarians, who can come at you with 9 units, which you can't defend against because you don't have the resources to be able to build the same units that they have. So I'm finding it like really, really difficult.
Barbarians changed in Civilization 6. So previously, barbarians would just spawn, and every X number of turns, depending on the difficulty, they would just send out units to attack you. But in 6, it works differently. So now a barbarian base would spawn, and then would send out a scout to come find you. And if it found you, if it returned back to that barbarian encampment, the next couple of turns, 2 to 3 turns, there will just be 50 troops surrounding. Well, I'm over exaggerating. There'll be like 5 troops surrounding that base that would come invade your city. And yeah, it does change the way you're dealing with barbarians. And it does make it harder. It definitely is very unbalanced. I do have to agree with you on that point, Gary, that the barbarians, yeah, I like the fact that I can take out a scout and then find the camp and take it out before it does any damage to me. But if I don't have a chance to do that, then I'm just overrun with barbarians. And I think what they were trying to do was make it a little bit more historical, because that's sort of how Rome fell, where, you know, it was just completely overrun by barbarians. But it definitely needs to have that one tweak inside of it where maybe they do need resources within sort of their invisible borders that they have, and, you know, so they're not just spawning out insane amount of barbarians to come after you that are overpowered, because most of the time they'll stay with the average tech level of everyone within the continent. But, you know, if you're so that was another thing that they introduced was continents. So if there's a barbarian on a different continent that's on the same landmass, that barbarian camp would actually get the average of the civilizations on that continent, which they could be higher than you. So now you're still on, let's say, archers, but they have tanks coming at you.
The biggest problem is, like, for example, swordsman is the same tech level as whatever the non-resource unit is, which I don't remember.
Swordmen come from
warrior,
warriors.
I guess. I think.
Yeah, so you have warriors in the ancient that upgrade to swordmen in the classical.
But of course, warriors need no resources and swordsmen need iron.
Yes.
Now, one swordsman can probably kill like 10 warrior units. So, and even if you've skipped swordsman, the next unit may not need resources, but they're equipped.
Pikemen?
Pikemen.
Spearmen.
No, that's what I mean. But
yeah, musketmen.
But musketmen need saltpeter to create.
Yes.
So my point is, if they've got swordsmen, you have nothing of equivalent standard, because the resource units are so much overpowered than the non-research units. So yeah, you can get the swordsmen with crossbowmen, which is a fair way in advance. But if they get up close enough, they'll still decimate you. So it's really, really, really difficult. And finding the resources is really, really, really difficult. Even if you have like 5 scouts out, you still have to get a settler. Like, it could be 30 hexes away, the resource you want from your nearest city. So are you going to go out and build? You know, you can't claim that resource in any way except for building a city around it. So
does it seem like in older civilization games, the way they ramped up difficulty was by letting the computer cheat? Does Civ 6 seem that way?
Yeah.
At much lower levels, where it just seems like the computer's able to cheat much more than you?
Well, the barbarians are able to cheat, yes.
Right.
I think the barbarians cheat more than the civilizations do. So what you're talking about is you would, in previous games of Civilization, you would send out a stack or a huge army to surround a city, and then the next turn, the AI would just spawn an equivalent number of units to sort of take that on right there. That's the computer cheating.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen the AI do that as much in Civilization 6 for the civilizations. But the barbarians, definitely, I've seen that happen, where it cheats a lot more. I'm playing a campaign right now where I, as Rome, was declared upon by Congo and the Vikings. And so I'm in a defensive war, so I'm just, of course, using that as an excuse to wipe them out. And I have the Congo capital surrounded by a bunch of legions and a bunch of catapults just wearing down their defenses. I don't have a lot of the Congo units coming at me. They have like one of their swordsmen inside of the city that I kill, and then I don't see one for another few turns, randomly spawning all of these units right away.
So is there anything that either of you like about Civ 6 compared to the older versions?
I actually like districts. I know Gary doesn't. I also like how the civics research is broken out from the regular science research. So now culture has a lot more weight to it. Because in Civilization 5, culture was mainly just used to expand out your borders, which I can do with my army. But now I can actually use culture to advance units available to me, wonders that I'm able to build, and I can tweak it or min-max it differently than I would my science. So basically, it's another tech tree, as it were, that uses culture for research.
I don't mind that. It hasn't won me over as much as it seems, Chuck. I like Sean Bean's narration.
Hopefully he doesn't die halfway through the game.
So far, he has not.
I like... to be honest with you, for me, it's too much of a revolution over evolution at this moment in time, and I might actually get to like it, but you can't just use your tactics from Civ 5 and just come up and start playing Civ 6 with the tactics that have dealt you, done you proud from Civ 5. The same tactics with small tweaks would get you through the entire thing. You can't just use those tactics in Civ 6. You have to go back to the drawing board. So I haven't really played it with enough thought and patience. I was expecting to put it on the middle level and just blast through a domination victory in one go and then go, okay, that was fun. Now I'll try and find some of the nuances. It's not like that. You really do have to start from scratch with your tactics and learn again, which is fine. Maybe I like it when I give it the time it deserves, I guess.
Yeah, the movement for units is definitely a big adjustment if you're a seasoned Civ player. So in previous civilizations, each tile would cost a certain amount of movement for a unit to leave. They reversed that in 6, where now you need that movement to enter that tile. So it changes around everything. Because in the past, if you had one movement, you can move into a forest and end a turn in the forest. Now, because the forest would cost 2 movement to leave. Now, if you only have 1 movement, you can't enter that forest until the next turn, so you need 2 to get into it. It really changes around the dynamic. It is a much more challenging way to do a victory, especially if you have a city that is surrounded by hills or forests or jungles, because getting your troops into position requires a lot more thought behind it.
So now I'm going to ask this question because this is something I just thought about doing. There's actually 2 questions here. If you like the Civilization franchise, would you recommend purchasing it? And if you've never played Civilization, would you recommend purchasing it?
Go check.
I think if you've never played Civilization, it is a great buy. The learning curve is very easy, in my opinion. If you've never played it, if you've never even played a 4X game, it's pretty easy to go through. The tutorials are very helpful. It kind of feels like Civ 5, where it's not a complete game just yet. There's still a lot of tweaking that they have to do, a lot of balancing in the game to get to it. I do enjoy it. I pick it up, I play it on the train. What's nice is it's got touch interface as well too, so I can play it on my new Yoga and just drag my fingers around. I don't need the trackpad as much. It is a good casual game. I'm not binging it as much as I do the other games I've been playing, but I would wait until at least a patch comes out where they tweak some of the balancing aspects of it, because they are going to patch it, not just do expansions.
Thank you. I would neither recommend seasoned Civ players to buy it nor brand new people to the franchise, to be honest. Not yet. Now, that's not to say it's not going to be a good game. If somebody came to me and said, I've heard you talking about Civilization, I'd like to give that series a go, I would say buy Civ 5 and the expansions, which you can probably pick up cheap as chips in Steam or somewhere right now. It's probably $20 all in or something. I don't know. Don't take that to the bank because I don't actually know that. But you know what I'm saying.
It may become winter sale time.
You know what I mean. If you wait for the next 6 months, you are going to be able to pick up Civ 5 plus Gods and Kings plus Brave New World for $20, right? I guarantee it in the next 6 months. And then that's a steal. That's because that's still a great game. And I don't think at this point in time, I feel like I wish I hadn't bought Civ 6. I'll put it out there. That's not to say if I get time to play it over the holidays now when I have some time off work, and I will sit down and give it a go, that maybe I'll change my mind. But at this point, I don't feel like it promised so much from the YouTube videos and the brand. I mean, the new graphics are really impressive, to be fair. On my, they crank everything up on my PC. It looks amazing. It's too different for me to feel comfortable at this moment in time.
Okay. Well, I think with that, we have talked about just about everything we can with the Civilization franchise. Like I said, one of the franchises near and dear to my heart. So thank you, Chuck, for joining us today. I know you've hounded us quite a bit to get on this episode.
Yes.
But so you can find him on Twitter as @manchuck. Is there anything you want to plug? No? Okay, great.
No, really.
As always, I am Dragonman Tank on Twitter, and Gary is how exactly do you pronounce that? Is it just G?
At GH is
GH. Okay, but it's spelled
I've always used it as Yeehaw.
It's fine. I'll answer. I'll answer to anything, as you know. So that's all good.
You always yell my name because Manchuck is all caps. So Gary just yells my name whenever he sees me. And I say,
but yeah, you can find Gary at GEEH. As always, you can find this episode and the show notes and everything else at jerkstalkgames.com. And if you want to find out when new episodes come out, you can follow us at Jerks Talk Games on Twitter or subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've recently redone the website, so if you'd like to leave us comments about the individual episodes, feel free to do that on YouTube or the actual website itself. I spent a whopping 3 hours revamping parts of the website this last time. So go ahead and enjoy all the stuff that's there. If you do listen to us wherever, if you're on iTunes, subscribe and like the videos if you like it, or if you didn't like it, don't downvote it or anything like that. That just makes us cry. If you listen to us on iTunes, make sure to rate the episodes and leave us any comments there. That not only helps us move up in the rankings there, but also lets us know how well we are doing. So with that, again, thank you, Chuck. Thank you for taking your time out of the day. And thank you, Gary, for deciding to talk to me again and continue this podcast.
My pleasure, Chris. This is a lot of fun. I think next time I'll probably tweet out suggestions, request for suggestions. I don't think we have anything particularly planned, lined up, Chris. So we should definitely tweet for suggestions, because that was a lot of fun last time. I think we'll promise to talk, even if it's only for 10 seconds, about anyone who tweets us a topic. How's that?
Yes, we will at least mention your Twitter handle.
If it is a game. I'm not saying like Donald Trump. Like, we will not discuss that. So don't tweet that. As long as it's a game, we will. We will definitely discuss your game if you tweet it at us. There's the proviso. Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
The only downside to that is there is a Donald Trump millionaire game. So
yes, there is.
But I'm okay to discuss the game. That's fine. Yeah.
I'm not. I've seen it. It's pretty bad. No matter whose name's on it, it's just an overall bad game. So yes, thank you to our guest. Thank you, Gary, and thank you to all of our listeners. We will talk to you soon, and don't forget to save your game.